Good evening. My name is Margery Gans, and I'm a member of the board of the Writers' Room of Boston. I'm delighted that you could join us this evening for the February reading, in our virtual series, Readings from the Room. This series began now almost 2 years ago in March 2021. And for anyone new to us, the Writers' Room of Boston is a co-working space in downtown Boston for any and all writers, established writers, and those who are emerging, anyone who wants or needs a quiet place to write. The room is open 24 hours a day. It provides desks and most of all silence and the quiet companionship of other writers. We've been serving the writers of the greater Boston area since 1993. And during and since the pandemic, the room has been offering online resources, including this reading series, online writing groups with prompts and discussions, and a new online interview series. In January, we inaugurated this interview series with guests knowledgeable about getting work to your publisher, agents, and guidance for online publishing. So contact us if you're curious or have any questions about the room and its programs. Check out our Facebook and Instagram posts at Writers of Boston, and our website has photos, announcements, and that's where you can find recordings of past readings from the room, and this one will also be recorded. We would be delighted to have new members, and we have different levels of membership, including a virtual membership for those who can't easily make it to downtown Boston. And if you're interested, please check out the website, writersroomofboston.org. So we launched this new reading series as a way to reach out to the writing community during the pandemic and share the wonderful writing from both established and emerging writers. We've been lucky enough to have writers from different backgrounds representing a range of genres, as well as a range of geographies, because some of the readers have called or the Writers' Room home, but some are from different parts of the country, thanks to Zoom. And thanks to the Mass Cultural Council and the Boston Cultural Council, who have given us grants, this series has been made possible. We also rely on friends. And so if you enjoy this program, please consider making a contribution using the donate button at the bottom of your screen. And as I said, we will be recording this reading and a replay will be available on the website. Tonight, we have a local poet, Hannah Baptiste, and we have Lindsey Schaffer, a writer and museum educator. As we go along this evening, feel free to use the question and answer feature in the box at the bottom of the screen. And if you have any questions of either reader, you can type in those questions and we'll have time for discussion at the end. Our first reader is Hannah Baptiste. Hannah is a Haitian American spoken word poet and aspiring author residing in Brockton, Mass. Her work has been published by WBUR. She won a regional gold key in the 2021-2022 Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. She has competed nationally in the NAACP Act So program. She's a first-year student at Suffolk University, majoring in English, and she is currently serving as the Brockton Youth Poet Laureate. So Hannah, go ahead.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Hi, everyone. Tonight, I'm going to be reading a few different poems. Most of my poetry centers around the Black experience and my personal experiences regarding my identity. I do this as a way to connect with myself and to come to terms with the world around me. My first poem is a poem I wrote a little bit over a year ago. It is titled Rest in Paradise, and it basically just honors our Black ancestors. Rest in paradise to our ancestors lost at sea, who decided it would be better to leave the slave ships and find a home in the ocean where they could protect coastlines and avoid the dangers that awaited them in a foreign land. Rest in paradise To our ancestors that broke their backs on the cotton and sugarcane fields, to those in the Civil War who knew freedom was their divine right and fought with the heavens on their side, rest in paradise. To my ancestors who fought and felt dams break in their bones during the Haitian Revolution and struggled to build from ruins, and to our ancestors who turned tears into fertilizer so their children could grow crops of their choosing, rest in paradise. To our ancestors who refused to yield, the hummingbirds that sing battle songs and give the wind whiplash as they move through the air, full of motion and letting everybody know that they can fly with their arms raised like wings and feet thumping the ground like an airplane leaving the terminal. Rest in paradise. To our ancestors who involuntarily passed down generational curses and were influenced by the ones that held them captive, we see you and know that the self-hatred in you was not a choice, but rather a means of survival. Rest in paradise. To our ancestors lost in the burning of Black Wall Street and the destruction of other prosperous communities who just wanted to work for their own prosperity instead of someone else's. Rest in paradise. To our ancestors who spent their lives with their bodies traced in caution tape, who always felt like a threat to others because that's what the world made them out to be. And to our ancestors who had to learn that it's okay to be vulnerable because even the earth weeps after spinning on its axis for too long. Rest in paradise. To our ancestors who were forgotten, the sound waves not loud enough to reach the threshold, and the ones whose presence wasn't present in history books, rest in paradise. To our ancestors who dared to dream and needed to believe they were more than a vessel for others to grow, the ones that are bricks of resilience and waterfalls of power. You are magic, you are love, you are the air in our lungs, you are the wonders of the world, the monuments we know existed because the memory was baked in the clay bricks of the pyramids of your history. I hope in your paradise you are showered with the grace of 1,000 moons, so you may always see beyond the atmosphere to which the world restricted you. May our Black ancestors get the rest and peace they dreamed we would one day have as they waited for their broken bones to mend, rushing with the pain of 1,000,000 broken languages. Rest in peace, rest in power, rest in prosperity, rest in paradise. My next poem is titled Harvest Over Humanity. It is the poem that I performed when I competed nationally in the NAACP's AXO Achievement Program last year. In this class, we are tired of finding new ways to teach the same lesson, managing to carve new units from the stone monuments littering the land like gravestones. In this year's lesson plan, we learned that America's classrooms extend beyond its brick and mortar walls. We see that the Liberty Tree is dying and will turn into compost beneath our eyes. First quarter, we learn that fractions don't just exist in math class. We learn about how fractions pollute the earth, harvest over humanity, power over peace, genocide over goodwill, with their toxic fumes giving everyone blurred vision to hide how we have money for wars, but not for our streets that need to be restored. Second quarter, we learn about harvest over humanity as the mills plow through the lands that don't belong to us, operated by those stolen from their land, as we feel our joints crackle like a wildfire, backs breaking like straw, and minds wilting at the sight of more than our bodies hanging from trees. We see the ashes of our hard work crumble from the leaves. While studying for the midterm exam, we feel our skin walk on hot coals as we stare at the rich white men on dollar bills, knowing they accomplished their dreams of keeping humans as monetary values. The 3/5 compromise may have been outlawed, but its numerical value still bleeds onto the stripes of the American flag. Third quarter, the longest term of the year, when we sit at our rotting desk made from diseased trees, actively participating in the lesson because our teachers want us to fully embody the lesson. We are Venus flytraps, standing still, rooted to the ground, or the pot we were forced into, just waiting for blessings to pass by. We tell the low-income people in the back of the class that the American dream turns into night terrors for those who dare to try. Fourth quarter, we learn that promises are zip ties meant to temporarily restrain us, long enough to lose a pulse for the issues that matter to us, as student loan repayments are delayed but never canceled. As we summarize the year in preparation for our final exam, this phrase wraps around our necks like a noose. Money will always be valued over human life. One day, I hope that the history books will be rewritten, but for now, this phrase chimes when the clocks reach a new hour. After learning that fractions don't just exist in math class, I know the Dead Sea isn't the lowest place in this world. It is the soles of the shoes of the people who let us twist our own necks for the benefit of a country that drowns us in their desires. My next poem is titled A Ship with No Anchor. It is about me trying to connect with my Haitian heritage despite not speaking the language. I walk into a family gathering, Creole rippling through the air like a tidal wave, and everyone knows how to swim but me. In my culture, I am a tourist with no tour guide. My translator app has no connection, and I'm lost with no resources. Voices rush around me as I try to comprehend what my family members are saying, but all I hear are sounds with no meaning attached. My ears turn into an ocean, and all I hear are waves of water I can't swim in. Every time I tell someone I don't speak Creole, I fear a part of myself plunge below the surface level of the water. They proceed to speak to me in Creole, attempting to turn on a switch in my brain that allows the words to flow in smoothly, not knowing the switch has been jammed and I don't possess the tools to fix it. I wish I could understand my grandmother's stories while she's still here, hear about the generations of our family I will never know, hear what was passed down the branches of our family tree, marked by strength and resilience. Instead, my branch falls off of the tree, no longer a part of it. My connection to my heritage is a ship with no anchor, sailing through but never finding its home port. All I know is the rice and beans my mom puts on my plate, the akra and plantain I devour, wanting to cling onto my only connection. I hear the echoes of conversation. I hear the remarks from those who know I don't speak my native tongue. They don't know that the shame courses through my veins as rapidly as a tsunami. The language was never inserted into my brain like a parent's teachings usually are. My mother left that lesson out. One day, I hope I will know more. One day, I hope I'll be worthy of adding the Haitian to Haitian American. One day, I hope I can look in the mirror and not see a girl lost at sea. My final poem is titled Standing in Your Own Skin. I am proud of my Blackness, not just because I have to be, but because there is no other way to live. This is the way to give to the earth what you take from it. There is no other way to play music without instruments. I am proud of my Blackness because my purpose, my joy lies in the rhythm of my skin, the creases in my hand that are the dents in the ocean floor, the paths in deserted areas, the peaks of mountains, the vines of the fruit that we grow and find endless ways to cut and eat. I am proud of my Blackness because I am the gateway to the fictional worlds you dream of escaping to, and I am here because the universe wouldn't have it any other way, because we are needed to sustain life and the joys that come with it. Thank you all for listening to me tonight.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. That was really a wonderful reading. So we're going to move to Lindsey Schaffer. And Lindsey is an author and aspiring museum educator. Her first chapbook, City of Contradiction, was published in 2022 by Selkirk Station. Other writings can be found in Variant Literature, Ethelzine, Chronically Lit, and more. Her poems utilize myth and ekphrasis to examine places of historic interest. Currently, she is receiving her master's in museum education at Tufts University, where she's exploring the intersections between creative writing and museum spaces. And Lindsey, go ahead.
Thank you, Margery, for that introduction, and Hannah for sharing your beautiful poems with us tonight. I am going to read a couple of poems from my collection, City of Contradiction. For a little bit of context, I wrote this when I returned from studying abroad in Athens, and it's basically my love letter to the city. So I'm going to start with the poem adequately named City of Contradiction. Elsewhere on this frosty night, Athens wakes without me. Oblivion teases, sunrise flickers over the Aegean Sea as a waitress yawns, lemon plates crushing wrists under weight of calamari screams. I long to survey the roots that slither beneath salty ruins, puncture the Parthenon with car fumes. By now, I would have already drank frappe from the muse's cup, studied every stone that had not yet inspired myth. Instead, I curl beside you, missing warmth, grasping for memories that slip away as easily as certainty. From the past, from the fragmented pieces, I resurrect the heat, the stumbling drunk, the modern gods. It is time to construct my own myth from the ruins. Baklava. The perfect baklava requires 6 layers of phyllo dough, coated generously with butter along the way. A crumble assembled from sugary nuts and spices is sprinkled in between. On top of that, a honey syrup is drizzled, bathed in amber liquid, and left to sit all night. The city of Athens is layered, periods of time enclosed within one another. Ancient piping lines the metro system. Decades-old newspapers crust the walls, the elements slowly shredding them into scraps in which the strays lay to rest. Created, recycled, appropriated. This is the life cycle of Athens, and this is the life cycle of baklava. All strewn together, fragments of larger pieces, crafted into one hell of a dessert. Diplon amphora. My professor's fingers slip over the vase, shadows casting night on the funeral procession. Watching by her side, you lean in to witness the mourners, the delicate wallows upon black mouths of stick soldiers and horses. I don't have the courage to reach out towards fragile art. My fingers are dusty. I don't want to leave prints on the vessel or be there when it falls to collect the shards. So instead, I sink back, a safe distance away, as she continues to explain how vulnerability is essential for art, how the most beautiful works are often the most unobtainable. What do you think of it? You ask, as my will shatters and I reach out to touch. The ruined and the pristine. I am 4 temples short of praying to each of the 12 Olympians. The gods wait on Mount Olympus, recline on gold thrones, starve for prayers. Once their temples were slick with libations. Now they crumble, buried beneath generations of debris and laurel trees. The most beautiful pieces were quarried and repurposed in Christian churches, where they have become place markers of divinity for a new god. We visit them for class and memorize their architects. Their names keep me up at night, and every morning I wake to visit Olympian temples. I float between poles, the ruined and the pristine, the ancient and modern, the Christian and pagan. In theology, we read the Bible. And in literature, we study myths. What I take from them so far is that in mythology, all women run, and the only way to escape is to change. Daphne, Eurydice, Atalanta, Thetis, is this me transforming? Whiskey thoughts. Sappho would be appalled, watching as waves vein paved illusions at the death of the muses. Drunk martyrs skip to the gallows where, resurrected only by alcohol, they scout for some semblance of ancient wisdom slathered by stone. I write poetry on the patio and watch as godless shadows creep and slice at mountain peaks. By the time dusk arrives, searching for what secrets lie in tears and brandy, marionette strings loosen. The remaining Maenads. It goes deeper than the gallows, pits of galloping satyrs, wreathing, trembling in pallor beneath laurel trees. Madness sets in when the seams of daylight fade, when bronze crusts and melts to fall. I light incense, watching the tapers curl, wanting nothing save sanity as the moon demands an entrance. Drunk women stumble, splutter past me, teeth ripe with wine. I'm tempted to join, to dance the night away. I came here searching for clues, connection with what I had lost in the modern world. Maybe they are searching too. The earth is growing lusher, but confusion prevents me from touching layers, long since settled over. All right. Immortality. My flowers shrivel and die, perched upon the promise of morning. I buy an extra bottle of wine so we can sit under the stars and attempt to answer why so many people find strength in certainty. While one drinks, the other listens, spurs ideas into creation. The patio centerpiece wilts under weight of night. How do I convince myself that there is such a thing as empty words when even the stars can be mapped into constellations? Maybe certainty, like all beautiful things, is not meant to be immortal. If that is the case, the only solace is in Socrates and how we will never know. As you speak, the last flares of day fizzle into morning on dusty shades. Car engines resurrect, life frequents the streets. We are no longer alone. Night is no longer venerable. I get my bag and prepare to go, realizing that if I'm to free myself from certainty, I must also resist the sweet ambrosia that lilts from the tongues of men. So this last poem I'm going to read is called Denial, and it's based on a poem of the same name written by the Greek poet Yorgos Seferis. And during his life, he protested the military dictatorship that was going on in Greece at the time. And because of that, a lot of his poems got banned. So when he passed away, he had this funeral procession through the city of Athens, and thousands of people came out and flooded the streets. And as they did, they began singing the words to his poem Denial. And this poem is basically my creative imagining of this event, which is trying to convey the power in poetry, as well as the importance of speaking up and listening to protests. So, Denial. Inky necromancers flood the streets, lips tight, sealed coffins. A man shifts in his boots, looks past a kernel, whispers, on the secret seashore, white like a pigeon, we thirsted at noon. How does one uproot a seed that has already been sown? The man prods his neighbor. Sing, he says. He sings. Colonels watch, gripping batons, white knuckles bloom as the poem unfurls and the resurrection begins. With what spirit, what heart, what desire and passion we lived our lives, a mistake. How does one locate the source of a fire when it is already combusted? The crowd reconstructs membranes from melodies, tendons from terminology, arms from alliteration. Unity is the substance of life, harmony, the voice of reason, and tyrants do not speak in metaphor. Sing, he says. They sing, so we changed our life. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you both. Everybody can come back now. Hi, Hannah. So this is a little chance for Q&A. We have a few minutes, and actually there is a question in the chat, which is a question that I was interested in. And this person is asking it of both of you, which is, which poets inspired each of you? And whoever wants to go first.
I think that's a great question. It's the hardest question for some reason to answer. The more poetry you read, the more difficult it is. But I would say I like a lot of contemporary poets like Danez Smith and Franny Choi. Anything that comes out of Coffee House Press or Grey Wolf Press in Minneapolis, I always love. So yeah, that would be my short answer.
I'm going to tack on a question, and then I want to make sure that we get to Hannah, but you're also inspired by art. And you said you wanted to say a little bit about your connection, the connection for writing and museum work for you. So since that's inspiring to you, why don't you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as Margery said, I'm in a museum education program right now, and a lot of my inspiration for this chapbook came while I was visiting museums abroad. And as I would look at these pieces, I would find these poems just coming to me. And so that's a part of my creative process that I highly recommend if you write, just going to a museum and letting it speak to you. Yeah, and I will always find something to get inspired from in a museum.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hannah, what inspired you? What poets inspired you? And or anything else too, I'll add that.
I agree with Lindsay that this is a very hard question to answer. Like, I'm sitting here thinking about it, and there are so many different poets that I read and listen to. But I listen to a lot of spoken word poetry that pops up on the channel Button Poetry or right about now on YouTube. And a couple of my favorites are Phil Kay, Rudy Francisco, Ebony Stewart, Dominic Christina. Those are just to name a few, but there are so many that I love and that I listen to. But I mostly draw my inspiration from everyday life, the things I hear and the things that I experience.
And the same way with Lindsay, I have a question to tack on to that. As I was listening to you, I thought of how much history there is. I mean, two things that sort of, well, two or three things leapt out at me, but one was history. The fact that you seemed like all your poems kind of had this aspect of understanding history, wanting to go back in history, being rooted, and also some very, I don't think sensory was quite the right word, but sort of very physical. I felt like I could really see what you were writing. And so I wanted to kind of ask where does history fit for you, and how does that inspire you?
History inspires a lot of my poems, actually, because I believe it is a very important part of who we are. And it, even unintentionally a lot, it gets incorporated into my poetry. What else was in that question? Sorry.
Well, it just that it seemed like there was also a lot of physical detail, which sort of goes along with history. I mean, I see things visually a lot, and as you read, I could really see kind of what you were writing about. And I don't know how, was wondering how conscious you are of writing with that much physical detail.
Honestly, I don't think I'm very conscious of it. I do try to add like a lot of metaphors in my poetry, but like the visual aspect, I suppose it just comes together when I'm done writing the poetry.
Mhm. So that brings us just about to 7:30. I would just like to add, I think the two of you were wonderful. And I'm really glad that I'm just going to speak as an older person. I'm just really glad that you're out there writing poetry, and keep going. Don't stop. I mean, I know you weren't planning to stop, but oh, wait. Oh my God, we have two more questions. One is thank you so much. That's not a question. So I'll ask you this one. It's maybe quick. Do fleeting poem ideas or verses ever strike either of you while just doing everyday things?
Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
okay. Yeah, fleeting poems and lines come to me all the time. I have a folder on my notes app that's just filled to the brim with random lines that never got used because in poems that like some of those poems I performed today that they came from those random lines. But yeah, they come to me a lot, and I have to write it down.
That's great.
Yeah, I was going to agree with that. The notes app on my phone is where most of my poetry comes from. And so it's usually when I'm caffeinated and I'm on my notes app, that's when the most inspiration strikes. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. So I will wrap us up. I think that's it. And I will thank you both for just wonderful readings, and for everyone who joined us. And a special thanks to Fernando Contreras, who is our technology maven for the evening, which we always rely on deeply. On March 21st, please join us when we'll have Mary Ellen LaPianca, and she researches Indigenous populations on the Massachusetts North Shore and has written about that. And Linda Cutting, who writes children's literature. So we'll have some variety on the 21st. And also, please join us for the upcoming interview in the Writers' Room After Hours series. That's February 28th at 7:30. It'll be the second one in our series, and this one is with James Kennedy, who is an author and also the organizer of the 92nd Newbury Film Festival, which is a film festival that invites 90 seconds of film done by children. And you could Google that if you wanted to find out more about that. Any announcements for readings, interviews, other Writers' Room news can be found on the website, Instagram, Facebook, and we would love to have you join us. So good night, and thank you very much again, readers and listeners alike. Good night.